Hello, in this video we are going to get classy with classes. Let's get to it. Pardon the interruption, I do have a big announcement before we continue on with the video content. And I want to say that I do have a new Instagram account. It is HD Coding, and this is where I will now be posting in all of my latest updates, as well as maybe some memes and other content that is having to do with my channel. And you can see multiple posts that I have here, as well as upcoming new videos and content that will be posted. And this is where I will be posting in future content from now going forward, and I'll slowly transition to be using this sole account. So if you haven't already, go ahead and follow this handler right here, and I'll probably follow back, and you can be up to date of what I'm doing within the YouTube realm. The other announcement that I want to have announced is that I did create a website for everyone to take a look at the latest videos, and I put them from the most up to date on the very top for you to take a look at. And this will take you to the individual YouTube itself, and you can watch those cases when you need. And I am going to build out and update the site as we go, and this will have different sections. For now, we're just talking about coding concepts, but later on there'll probably be a tutorial section, a podcast section, things like that. So this site will grow as the channel grows, and all of the content will be posted also on this particular site. So that is all of the announcements I have for now, and let's go ahead and continue on with the video. Now, typically when we are working with classes, we are most likely going to be using it as a blueprint of an object. And again, objects are just person, place, or things. And when we are having a blueprint of it, we are describing what that particular object has and what we can do with it. And that is how we are going to typically use classes, is as a blueprint of a particular object. And that is one of the uses of a class, is that you are able to use them as objects. The other thing that you can do is that you can use inheritance and also polymorphism and encapsulation. With inheritance with classes, they have a certain relationship between one object versus the other. And we'll be going into more depth with that in a future video, as well as the topic of polymorphism. Polymorphism and inheritance kind of go hand in hand, and essentially objects are able to take on many forms. So that will also be in another video that is separate from this video. And the last thing that you can use objects is using encapsulation. You can encapsulate all of the logic and everything having to do with a particular object, and you can encapsulate them all in one single class. And that is a great use for another object. The last three things here will be in another video, and I will explain and give you more examples about those three things, because they are a little bit more of a conceptual thing that goes beyond classes themselves. But with those three things, you can use them within classes. So here is an example of a typical class. And I'm using the Ruby language here just because it's more clear cut of what it is I'm trying to do. And for the first two things, the attributes as well as the initialize method, those are optional. Not every class will have them, but in some cases you may or may not see them. Essentially what the attributes are is what the car actually has. It's certain characteristics, certain attributes that the object has. And in this particular case, a car has a color, mileage, and seat. And sometimes when you see attributes, you may have to also see how you have access to those attributes. With Ruby, you have attributes assessor, writer, and readers. So that essentially will limit you to either write or read certain types of attributes. You're either able to see them or you're able to manipulate them. So that really depends on the language as well. But typically you would always have attributes when you are dealing with objects. And the next thing is also an optional field of the initialize method. And the initialize method is going to be a keyword. That's why when you are having the keyword initialize, that is typically ran first within a class. So anything you want to do at the very beginning of a particular class, when you initialize it, then this is what you are going to be putting it in, is inside of this initialize method itself. And sometimes you may be passing in certain parameters such as the attributes and other information that you need. And that is something the initialize method can handle. So any logic that you need to run at the very beginning when you are creating a object, and also anything that you want to do afterwards. And here for this example, you can see that we're checking the mileage to see if it is time for us to have an oil change, and we are also setting it to instance variables. And we'll go into what instance variables are in a little bit. This is where we'll be utilizing to the best of its capability, is to be using it as instance variables. And then other things that class has is it has different kinds of methods. And there are a few types of methods within classes, and this is what you are able to do within the car itself. For example, you can update the mileage with this car trip method. And those are technically what you will be doing, is that you'll have different methods that is having to do with cars all inside of this particular class. And that is what you are going to be using or maybe seeing when you are going to create a class. Now, to use a class, you need to instantiate it with the keyword .new. And with the .new, you are creating a new type of object within that class. Again, classes are just blueprints of objects. So when you are going to instantiate a car, you need to tell it what kind of car it is. For this example, you can see that we are using the car class. So it will be the class that we are instantiating .new. And with that, we need to pass in the parameters. Within the parameters, that is going to be taken within the initialize method. And we know that the car has a red color, has that many miles, and has 4 seats. And I'm setting this to a variable just so I can reference this car later. So with Dad's car here, I can see the car's color as well as their mileage as well as seats by instantiating and referencing this particular thing. And what it's actually doing is that you can technically thinking of it as making a new car with these certain parameters. So we can technically pull any of those parameters out from that particular car. The other thing that we have access to is the individual methods within that particular class. And one of the things is we can update the car trip of the mileage. And with the mileage, you can see that we are updating to 30 miles for the trip itself. So you can manipulate data within the car itself by using methods here. And the main thing is that when you are instantiating, you may or may not need to pass in parameters. So make sure that you are calling the class's name .new, and you may need to pass in parameters. Now this goes into the idea of instances. So when we are thinking about instances, really in real life, you're not going to have a single car. We have multiple cars, and there's a lot of cars out there and they belong to multiple people. So that's why classes goes to our advantage, because we're not making a bunch of car classes like your car, my car, and those will be separate classes. That will technically be not as dry at all, because you'll take the same code and copy and paste them over and over again, but you're just changing like the individual color, mileage, and seats there. The better thing to do is you can create different instances of it. So when you're creating a class, you are creating a blueprint of a car, of the bare bones of what a car has. And in this case, I can make many cars. I can have a car for my dad, for my mom, and my brother. They can all have different cars with different types of parameters. And when we are changing that particular car, it changes that instance of a car. And it doesn't change anything else unless we want it to. So that is the key proponent of when we are using instances. And this is where classes really come into play, is that we could create many cars and manipulate many of them by using instances of that class. Now this goes into instance variables. We haven't talked about instance variables, and if you want to look into the video where I talked about them, go ahead and click right there, and there should be a card for you to check that out. And when we are talking about different instances, is that we are referring to the different kinds of cars that we are instantiating. So the instance of my dad's car is different than the instance of my mom's car. Just because they are two different cars doesn't mean that they have the same parameters. So when we are using anything having to do with the dad's car, then it will have those types of parameters with those types of methods. And when we're doing anything with my mom's car, they will have different parameters. They would have different fields for us to use. So when we do change different things and when we're using them in a different way, they only work for when we are referring to that particular instance. For this example, I have two cars here. I have my mom's car and my dad's car. And these are just fake data. I really don't know their exact mileage. I'm just guesstimating here. And you can see that when we are pulling in the information for the dad's car here is .color, and the color is red. And then if we do 30, then we can up that mileage into 30 more. But when we change our instance, when we are using a different type of car, such as my mom's car, I can't just all of a sudden use my dad's car.color here in this particular instance, because this is a different type of car. We're not dealing with my dad's car in this case, we're dealing with my mom's car. So typically in that circumstance, you might get an error because we are talking about different types of context, the different types of instances. And that is the use of instance variables, is that the longer you are using them, that is how you would have access to those particular variables. If you aren't referring to those particular instances, or if they change to a different instance, then you don't have access to them. And that's how instance variables work, is that they are the scope within a particular instance of use. And that it pretty much sums up classes for now. And we are going to make a multi-part series within classes to talk about those other topics such as polymorphism, inheritance, and encapsulation, as well as going into instance and class methods, because there are other things that you can do with classes that we haven't covered in this video. But just note that when we are talking about classes, we are talking about a blueprint of an object, typically. And without further ado, I will see you in the next video. See ya!